Friends of Carrington Moss are a local community group which is working with parish councils and other resident groups to try and ensure there's genuine engagement with the community in relation to the plans for our area. We have faced a number of obstacles, including a lack of respect for residents' views and priorities, and a lack of funding sources for groups such as ours to enable residents like us to take forward our ideas. We've summarised the key points in this video and look forward to hearing your feedback at our meeting on the 3rd of March. We'll initially provide a bit of background to set the context for our position and our proposals, and then we'll go on to the 4 key points we'd like to discuss. Carrington Moss is a local green space, almost all of which is land designated as Greenbelt. It includes over 200 hectares of the best and most versatile Grade 2 agricultural land and incorporates the preferred riding routes for over 1,000 horses stabled in the area, both of which contribute significantly to Trafford's local economy. 2 of the electoral wards on either side of the Moss include some of the most disadvantaged residents in Trafford, and they, along with many others, are able to extensively use this free-to-access local green space for walking, cycling and horse riding. It provides a variety of health benefits to the community and is a destination for our local social prescribing team to support those who need additional help and care. In addition, Carrington Moss features peat moss land, unsurprisingly, which protects the local area from extensive flooding. You can see some references to that on the Carrington Lake page of our website. We also have over 20 red-listed birds and other endangered species, including the water vole, which have made Carrington Moss their breeding and feeding grounds. There's over 100 hectares of woodland, which along with the peat moss provides extensive carbon capture capabilities. And several sites of biological importance and sites of special scientific interest are located on and around the Moss. Let's introduce the master plan that's already been created with extensive input from developers and no input at all from residents. This plan will see 5,000 additional homes, 380 square metres of additional employment space and 4 new roads being constructed following the release of 169 hectares of Greenbelt. We'd like to influence this plan, and with that in mind, the Friends of Carrington Moss have hosted a number of workshops which have been attended by the local authority, landowners, developers, specific experts, local businesses and community representatives, including pupils from local schools. The community here is very keen to be involved. We have also put together 3 alternative strategies to this current master plan, one relating to housing and employment land supply, a second relating to the transformation of the area into a carbon and biodiversity bank, and the third, the subject of this video, is an alternative transport strategy which we've created jointly with Carrington Parish Council. The planned developments will bring a significant deterioration of air quality for existing residents, athletes using sports grounds on and around the Moss, and children playing on adjacent parks, to say nothing of users of the Transpennine Trail, which runs right through the area. The local authority has rather disingenuously coloured the remaining corridor between the townships green, yet that area contains the United Utilities Works, the Manchester United training grounds, 2 riding centres, a large National Grid site, Sale Sharks training grounds and Sale Rugby FC's training grounds. So most of it is not actually green and it's not accessible to the general public. We launched a petition before last year's lockdown and secured over 1,200 signatures against a road being constructed across the peat moss. We've also recently circulated an online survey to gauge support for this new Carrington Master Plan. We've already had over 600 responses, with 91% not supporting these plans and over 95% supporting the Friends of Carrington Moss proposals. Carrington is a medieval village which currently has 120 households and a large employment area. The number of households will increase dramatically to over 700 once the new properties are built and sold. In addition, the amount of business traffic will increase as the additional employment premises are let. Many of the existing companies use significant numbers of HGVs on a daily basis, leading to in excess of 1,500 HGV movements a day, based on 2017 transport statistics. In fact, we recently counted over 200 HGVs in a rush hour and over 130 HGVs an hour outside of rush hour, and that was in September 2020, when traffic numbers were expected to be lower than normal. Carrington residents face the following issues, which are a direct result of the high volume of traffic that runs through the village. These include, but are not limited to, HGVs causing structural damage to properties. The vibrations have resulted in one resident's ceiling collapsing. Speeding vehicles. During that rush hour traffic count, we saw 2 HGVs and 1 car go through the traffic lights on red. Very scary. And of course, significantly high levels of air and noise pollution. In addition, public transport services are extremely limited in this area. During that rush hour traffic count, we only saw 1 bus. This leaves local residents totally reliant on cars as a means of travel. We have worked together to develop an alternative to Trafford's plan to construct a road across local greenbelt land. While some of the improvements we're suggesting could be implemented immediately, we recognise others will need extensive dialogue and planning. We believe, for example, that significant improvements can be achieved for Carrington residents by implementing traffic calming initiatives through the village, including speed restrictions, speed cameras and pedestrian crossings. Whilst we'd also like to implement weight restrictions, some discussions will be needed to provide an alternative route for HGVs along a local service road known as the A1. We would also like to initiate discussions with Transport for Greater Manchester to improve the public and community transport available in this area. Our solution is focused on the needs of local residents, addressing the current and future traffic requirements and bearing in mind the changes to travel practices that have resulted from the COVID pandemic. The assertion from Trafford that commercial sites will be sustainable, one key element of which is the employment of local people, and the recent emphasis on active travel. Yet it seems no priority can be given to introducing the relatively inexpensive traffic calming initiatives, and our alternative to the road across the Peat Moss, a bridge across the Manchester Ship Canal, has been dismissed without real consideration. This option would be a much more appropriate solution, given the opportunity to restore and preserve our peat moss as a carbon and biodiversity bank. It would take HGV traffic to the A57, which links to both the M60 and the M6. It is also a direct route to Port Salford, which is being developed with the aim of moving HGV traffic to ship and rail transport. Our solution would also bring significant benefits to Carrington businesses, including reduced journey times and costs. We have a detailed alternative transport strategy document, which is available on our website. We have 4 key issues we'd like to discuss with you at our meeting. These are all interlinked and we'd welcome your views and insights. We'll cover our thoughts in a bit of detail so we can focus the session on 3rd of March on your inputs. The first issue is genuine community engagement. Are all our public services frightened of the electorate? Why is it so hard for residents to be part of the design process for plans for their area? Whether they're plans for major development, the construction of roads, or planning applications for specific sites. Had we been engaged earlier, we could have informed Trafford that the key issue for local residents is HGV traffic. This was not even mentioned in their initial business case. Another high priority for us is that the green lungs of Trafford, Carrington Moss, is protected as it brings many benefits to local residents. It's a natural tool to dissipate the polluted air from the motorways, the major roads, the flight path, and the polluting businesses in Carrington. Whilst national guidance says that plans should be shaped by early, proportionate and effective engagement with communities, this is just not happening. Our own experience is a good case study. Robust and genuine consultation should be carried out at a time when it's possible to take account of the views of local residents, not after so much money has been spent that it's deemed inappropriate to change a plan to meet their needs. And engagement is not about issuing documents for residents to comment on either. The GMSF, for example, the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, released over 150 documents, 14,000 pages, for residents to review. Engagement is about getting us around the table, actually taking account of our inputs and feeding them into the process before the plan is finalised and published. Ticking a box is no longer enough. Citizens want to be well informed, they want to participate in and contribute to the design process, and they want to be at the heart of all decisions made for their area. Our political representatives should not be happy with anything less. So just looking at the Carrington Link Road, for example, which is a commitment in the GMSF and the Greater Manchester Transport Strategy 2040, despite there having been no consultation to date. In fact, the first consultation is actually due to open on Monday the 22nd of February 2021, running rather unfairly at the same time as Trafford's local plan consultation, which we think is a little bit unreasonable. To be fair, since the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework documents were produced in October 2020, engagement with our local authority has increased. We understand they are now considering an alternative route for the Carrington Link Road as part of this consultation, alongside the route across Carrington Moss. This new level of engagement is much appreciated, but the community priorities of traffic calming and public transport, together with our option of the bridge across the Ship Canal, have been summarily dismissed. Genuine consultation should actually begin with all those impacted being informed and being asked, is there a need for a new major road? Yet Trafford are pushing ahead with a plan that has had no community input, that was first conceptualised prior to their declaration of a climate emergency, prior to the recognition of the health impacts of air pollution, and prior to the changes in travel practices brought about by the pandemic. Their plan should be comprehensively reviewed, and spending the 33 million underestimated for that new road on improved public transport would be a much healthier investment and would bring considerably greater benefits to an area which is currently significantly underserved by public transport. Along with local knowledge and many other advantages from our extensive engagement with residents, our transport strategy solution brings greater benefits in terms of reduced travel time, improves air quality for Carrington residents without impacting other communities, and would also result in reduced healthcare costs because of the higher levels of air quality our plans will bring. Given the need for significant levels of public money, the options which offer the most benefits should be fully explored. Citizen ideas and priorities should be listened to and acted upon, or the reasons why not should be clearly explained. It's not good enough just to dismiss resident priorities as irrelevant. We will, of course, suggest this in our consultation feedback, but it would be helpful to have some guidance and insights from you about how residents can secure a commitment for our proposals to at least be genuinely considered alongside a comprehensive review of the current plans. We'd like to take this opportunity to share with you some added value initiatives we'd like to explore as part of our proposal. These cycling buses, for example, are a must for both children and adults. Not only are they great fun to ride, they are the healthy alternative to the car and get children used to a bike in comfortable conditions. We're actively seeking funding for this initiative and already have 3 schools, 2 local businesses and the social prescribing team interested. But where is the funding for communities so they can take forward ideas such as this? We've identified a number of other schemes to help change behaviours for the long term, but many need to be supported by increases in public and community transport. We'll be looking at opportunities to develop on-demand options, business-funded transport from key hubs and stations to the Carrington Employment Zone, and we're also interested in the trackless tram, which is an electric-powered transit system that utilises the existing road network to deliver quiet, sustainable public transport that's better for the environment, significantly quicker, less expensive and less disruptive to implement, and would bring considerable increases in accessibility to our neighbourhoods. Please can you let us know where we as a community group can bid for funding for initiatives such as this? We'd also love to hear any ideas you have about other initiatives we could consider as alternatives to cars on our local roads. Moving on to our concerns about air pollution, we now know that the health impact of air quality is extremely serious, yet air pollution remains a hidden threat with hazardous levels in many places and little education or awareness being commissioned. Nationally, the House of Commons Environmental Audit Committee concluded back in 2010 that air pollution contributed up to 36,000 premature deaths a year. In Greater Manchester, all 10 local authorities have areas with unsafe or illegal levels of air pollution, and 152 stretches of road in Greater Manchester have been reported as having levels of nitrogen dioxide in breach of legal limits. Toxic air is expensive, it's costing millions of pounds to the public purse, and it's putting an unnecessary burden on our health services. More needs to be done to ensure the focus is on travel solutions that will not result in greater levels of air and noise pollution, with the associated impact on the health and well-being of our residents and our wildlife populations. Interestingly, the recent COVID restrictions brought increased walking and cycling, cleaner air and changes to travel practices. So transformational change is possible where there is a political will. We do need the funding and resources, though, to make these temporary changes permanent. We need strong guidance that moves decision makers away from prioritising the car, with associated investment in significant improvements to public transport. And we need a real focus on air quality monitoring. Carrington Village currently experiences very high levels of air pollution, particularly due to the high volume of HGVs mentioned previously. Carrington Parish Council and the Friends of Carrington Moss are funding 6 diffusion tubes each month through donations raised by the local community to create a baseline against which future pollution levels can be compared. You cannot manage what you do not measure, so additional air quality monitoring devices at a local level should be a priority. And given the national recognition, particularly following the sad death of Ella Adu Kissi Deborah, this is something the government should be funding. Who can we raise this with at a national level? Finally, the impact of climate change also needs to be considered. Let's move on to that now. Transport policies have a wide-ranging impact on land use and climate change, so it's important that these work to the benefit of communities and the environment. Road building provides neither a medium nor a long-term solution to traffic problems, and it's clear that we cannot build our way out of congestion. We need to change behaviours. Over 70% of local councils have now declared a climate emergency, and many have set a much earlier target date for zero carbon than the government's 2050 ambition. This means they need to act very quickly now to even come close to achieving that goal. So how do these plans for Carrington Moss support the zero carbon future we need? Well, Trafford's recently published Carbon Neutral Action Plan does not even mention that we have 2 peat mosses here that could be restored to support the capture of significant levels of carbon. The current plan is to build roads across the Greenbelt rather than protecting this carbon sink. And development is often criticised for its focus on car users, as is the case here in Carrington. But we also have a huge expansion of the employment space. Industrial units are being built with a road alongside, so goods can be loaded onto HGVs and transported via the road network. This conflicts with both Trafford's declaration of a climate emergency made back in 2018 and their aim to be carbon neutral by 2038. At a national level, Highways England are currently holding a public engagement event about the new smart motorway scheme, the M6 junction 21A to 26. We understand that this scheme has the largest carbon impact of all schemes in the RIS2. It will apparently lead to over 4 million extra tonnes of carbon due to the expected increase in traffic. The online exhibition, however, makes no mention of the carbon impact of the scheme or even of climate change, which is truly bizarre. Is there a complete lack of awareness in our public bodies? It seems that specific guidance needs to be published that is relevant for all transport schemes, local, regional or national. Guidance that requires public authorities to review their plans to ensure they meet climate emergency policies and do not result in yet more pollution. It's very surprising, given that net zero 2050 target, the Paris Agreement, and the recognition of health impacts of air pollution, that such guidance has not yet been produced and has not been supported by a rebalancing of the budgets for roads versus public transport and active travel options. Local authorities should be required to ensure that all new major developments have to provide detailed plans to demonstrate how they will facilitate a shift to sustainable modes of transport. The new Carrington development does not do this. COVID has provided the catalyst for a future sustainable transport ecosystem with cleaner air, quieter, safer streets, environmental and biodiversity benefits, and real changes of behaviour. So how is the current DFT guidance being measured and monitored? It states that the government expects local authorities to make significant changes to their road layouts to give more space to cyclists and pedestrians. How is this expectation being funded? So just to revisit our request, we'd be keen to hear your views about how we can secure more engagement earlier in the process. It's really important that residents feel respected and that their views and inputs are valued. So how do we secure a commitment to genuinely consider our proposals in relation to transport schemes? We'd be delighted to have your guidance and insights on the most appropriate approach. Is there a need for some regulatory guidance here? We know we're not alone in this experience with local road building, and this lack of respect for resident views is costing the public purse. As you heard earlier, we have some ideas we'd like to take forward, but where are the funding sources for community initiatives? We'd also love to hear any ideas you have about other initiatives we could look at to create alternatives to having cars on our local roads. Additional air quality monitoring devices at a local level should be a priority because you cannot manage what you do not measure, and we seriously need to fully understand local air pollution levels across the UK and to share information about the health impacts of high pollution on local people and on our wildlife populations. There have been some great initiatives to reduce traffic identified during the pandemic. Again, we need funding and resources to make these temporary behavioural changes permanent. It will be great to be able to reward people for changing their behaviours, and it will add to the encouragement to increase take-up of such initiatives. We also need strong guidance to move decision makers away from prioritising the car and to bring associated investments in significant improvements to public transport and active travel options. Who can we discuss this with at a national level? It seems that all the right aspirations are there, but the actions do not follow the policies. Can guidance be issued to local authorities requiring a review of planned transport schemes to ensure they meet climate change objectives and do not result in increases to pollution levels? We also mention the current DFT guidance about modal change. How is this being measured and monitored, and how is the government's expectation being funded? We're looking forward to moving ahead with a well-resourced public transport and active travel options for all local communities. Thank you so much for listening and for agreeing to meet with us.